Hi, Mrs. Polina.
Hi, how are you?
The entire viewing audience can hear you, so if you wanted to make some sort of announcement to them before we get started, feel free to do that. If not, we'll just launch right into the financial aid.
Okay, well, I just wanted to tell all the students, thanks for being here because this is a really important night. I'm glad that they're paying attention to their Canvas messages. And for those of the students that are missing this, we're going to be able to record it and put it on our website with other information about creating the FSA ID and so on. So I really appreciate you doing this, Michelle. Thank you very much. And thanks for all the students and parents for being here.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Michelle Gonzalez, and I am over here at Florida Gulf Coast University. And I am so happy to be with you tonight. Over in the chat, you're going to see I added 2 polls. So I'd like to get to know a little bit more about our audience before we get started. So if you could just take a minute and answer those 2 polls. The first is, are you a first-time in college student? Maybe you're like myself and you're the first in your family to ever go to college, so this whole process is new to you. And how do you feel comfortable with the financial aid process? So if you guys could just take a few moments to answer that. We're going to go ahead and then get started once we have some answers to those polls. So that we can see where everybody kind of is in the process. Is my presentation live? I can't see it. Okay. All right. So we have quite a few of you who are first-time in college students and are not so comfortable with the financial aid process. I promise you by the end of this evening, you're going to feel much more comfortable with this process. You're going to know what you need to do to help you and to help your student get the most aid package available. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about understanding financial aid. What is it? How to apply for it? How to look for scholarships? What happens after you've done these applications to get to the financial aid award process? And as time permits, we're going to take some questions. So if you have a question, kind of wait to the end because we may get to it through the presentation. But before we get started, I do want to give a special shout out to my friends from admissions who made this presentation possible today. They are hosting us on their platform. So thank you very much to Tammy, Laura, and Katie, who really, we could not have had this night without them. So if you have any questions about admissions, you can text back the notification for tonight's meeting, and they will answer any FGCU admissions related questions you have as well. So you can keep that handy, so anywhere along the way, if you have an admissions questions, you can go ahead and do that. Because I'm just going to cover financial aid tonight. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So let's just understand what financial aid is. Financial aid is meant to help your student make college more affordable. But the primary responsibility for paying for college becomes from the student and their family. Okay, so it's meant to help. It's helped to give them resources, and it's achieved by the FAFSA, by state aid applications, institutional aid, and private aid. And it's to take that aid and distribute it in an equitable manner. And it's to balance that free money with self-help aid, which we'll talk about a little bit more, and then loans. Okay, so it's to help students, get the help they need to be able to go to college. So let's just talk about how to apply for financial aid. All of these applications are going to start on October 1st. So that is the date when these applications open for both the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid, the CSS profile, the Bright Future State Aid application. They all go live on Thursday, October 1st. And you want to apply early. Some of the aid from these various programs are limited. So they have priority deadlines by each institution of when you have to apply by to be considered for that. At FGCU, our priority date is January 1st. So students who apply between October 1st and January 1st, are considered first for certain aid programs. Those dates are going to vary from institution to institution. So you want to make sure you know whatever school you're looking to attend, what is their priority deadline? Okay, and then we're going to talk about institutional aid. Each institution's applications for institutional aid will go live on different days. At FGCU, just to make the process simple, our institutional aid application also goes live on October 1st, so you don't have to think about multiple deadlines. But again, you want to know what school you're looking to go to, what their deadlines are. So we're going to take a deep dive into these various applications so that when you go to fill them out, you're much more comfortable. So the first one and the largest source of financial aid is the FAFSA, which stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And I stress the word free. You should never pay to have someone complete your FAFSA for you. It really has become a lot easier and simpler to complete. There's tools built into it to help you. So they're going to gather your family's information, your personal information, who lives in your household, the age of the people who live in your household, and the financial information, and it calculates what's called an expected family contribution. So as you're going through the FAFSA, if you run across a question that you don't understand, don't guess, or you're not really sure what it's looking for. Every question has this blue circle with a question mark in it. If you click on that, it's going to give you detailed instructions, okay? But if you're still not sure, you can always go to studentaidhelp.ed.gov, and on there's various ways to communicate with a representative from the Department of Education who hosts the FAFSA, and you can chat with them, you can email them, and you can call in. So there are various ways to get help, or you can also contact the financial aid office at the school you're looking to attend for assistance. If you get stuck on a question and you're really not sure how to answer it, you want to answer it with accurate information, because if you guess on this, you may end up with conflicting information that then causes a delay in processing of your financial aid. So you don't want to guess. If you're not sure, save your application and get assistance before going on. Don't submit it with guesses, okay? So let's talk about what the FAFSA calculates. The FAFSA is going to calculate what is called your expected family contribution, or as I'm going to refer to it as your EFC. This EFC is basically like a fitness score for your financial health of your family. And it is made up of the student's contribution and the parent's contribution. So if the student is working or has assets or income, that's going to be calculated in how much that your family can afford to pay towards college. It's not the amount of money that your family will have to pay for college. It's just the number of a fitness strength. So the lower the number, the more aid and assistance that your family needs. The higher the number, your family is in better financial health, okay? So that EFC is used to determine the amount of federal aid you are able to receive. And here in Florida, it also determines your eligibility for aid from the state as well. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Just remember, your FAFSA is something you're going to complete every year. So every year you're going to use a new tax year, and you're going to complete that on a yearly basis. So let's talk about what you're going to need. You can start gathering now. Your school is right on top of this. I'm so impressed with Golden Gate. They had this scheduled for the second week of school, which is so impressive. You have time to get all this stuff ready. So on October 1st, you are ready to go and complete that FAFSA. So let's talk about what you need. You're going to need to create your FSA ID for the student and parent. And we're going to go into that in a little bit more detail in a minute. You're going to need the social security number for the student or the alien registration number, and that for the parents as well, if they are a U.S. citizen. Now, if your parent is not a U.S. citizen, don't worry about that. We're going to talk to you how you fill out that if your parents do not have a social security number. Okay, if you're a student, you have a driver's license, you're going to need your driver's license number. You're going to need you and your parents' 2019 federal tax return and W-2s, okay? You're going to need bank statements. Do they have investments? You're going to talk about records of untaxed income, and then you're going to need a list of the schools that you want to apply to. And we're going to go over all of these items in a little bit more detail, but these are the stuff that you can start gathering now so that when you go to sit down and do the FAFSA, you have all of this available. The average length to complete a FAFSA is just under 30 minutes, so it doesn't take a lot of time if you're ready and you have the items available when you go to sit down to do it. So the first step, and this is something that you should do now, don't try to do this when you go to sit down and do your FAFSA. An FSA ID is something that the student and the parent each need one of, okay? And it basically is your electronic signature. It allows you to sign the FAFSA without having to mail in any paperwork or do anything that. It requires your identity to be validated, and they do that by using your social security number. You need a separate email address, so the parent and the student cannot share an email address. If your parent does not have a social security number, they cannot obtain an FSA ID. But that doesn't mean you can't complete the FAFSA. When you get to the end and it requires the parent's signature, they can't sign it electronically, so you're going to print out the paper signature page and mail it in to the FAFSA. And you're going to make sure your parent signs that in blue or black ink. If you sign it in any other color, they will reject it. And then that's how they'll complete the signature part of the FAFSA. So now if maybe you're a student who has a brother or sister who's already gone to college, or maybe your parents are in college. If your parents already have an FSA ID, they do not create another one. They are themselves, they're verifying their identity, so they can use that to assign multiple siblings or sign their own FAFSA. So if the parent already has created one, that's great. They don't need to do anything, but you, the student, are going to need to create one. So go ahead and do this ahead of time. You're going to want to make sure that you have that, and then never share your FSA ID, because this is something that you'll use if you want to take out loans or apply for a Parent Plus loan, and that is your identity. So if somebody uses that they're saying it was you that created that, and that's you logging into your account. So never share that. Keep that safe, just like you would your social security number or any of your other IDs. And make sure that you put this in a safe place, because like I said, you're going to need this for multiple items and multiple years. So every time you go to use the FAFSA, you want to know what your FSA ID and password are. So keep that somewhere safe, but go ahead and do this now. Do that before you go to sit down and do the FAFSA. Because for some people, it's the hardest process, because they have to come up with answers to questions to, if they do get logged out or forget their password, to reset it. And those challenge questions can sometimes be a little bit challenging. So you want to go ahead and do that ahead of time. So what do you need to create your FSA ID? You're going to need your email address. You're going to create a username. You're going to create a password. And then you're going to enter your mobile phone number. And this is optional, but I really suggest that you do this. That way, if you do get locked out of your account, they will email you a code, text you a code, and then you can enter that in to easily reset your account. You're going to set up 4 challenge questions, and you're going to accept the terms, verify your phone number, and verify your email address. So it's a very simple process to do, but it can be lengthy just because of the number of steps. So you and your parent want to go ahead and do that as soon as possible. All right, let's go into some questions in depth on the FAFSA that you may encounter that I've seen from my 20 years of experience in financial aid that sometimes cause confusion or get frequently answered incorrectly. Okay, so let's start with, how many of you are doing dual enrollment currently and maybe taking classes at FSW or over here at FGCU? Okay, so if you're doing that, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Okay, so we have quite a few of you that are doing that. So this is a question that often trips up students when they get to their FAFSA. They ask you, what level are you in college? Because you've taken those classes, maybe you've taken AP or ACE classes and you're getting credit for those, because you've taken them in high school, when you answer that question on the FAFSA, you're going to say that you are a first-time in college student, never attended college before, even if you've done dual enrollment. And then it's going to ask you what your degree you're pursuing. And if you're going to a 2-year school, you're going to be going for an associate's degree. If you're going to a 4-year school, you're going to be going for your first bachelor's degree. So even if you have some college credit earned, you are a first time, never been in college before, because you're still in high school when you're taking and earning those credits. So that's one of the questions that sometimes trips up students. So let's just talk about citizenship requirements. In order to apply for and receive financial aid, you have to be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen. Now, the FAFSA citizenship looks at the student's eligibility, not the parents. So it doesn't matter if your parents are not a U.S. citizen, are living in a foreign country, it does not matter. It's, are you eligible, the student? If your parents do not have social security numbers, when they go to fill out the FAFSA and it says enter their social security number, you're going to enter all zeros, okay? You're going to put 000000000. Okay, so that's going to be their social security number, and that is fine. The FAFSA recognizes that parents are not required to be a citizen or an eligible non-citizen. It's just the student's eligibility. If you are a student and you are a DACA student, you are not eligible for federal aid, but you can still complete the FAFSA. And you're thinking, why would I want to complete the FAFSA if I'm not eligible for aid? A lot of institutions can then use this information to then award you institutional aid. So it's a way to get that information processed, even though you can't be awarded federal aid. Okay, so it gives the institution the ability to see your family's finances and all of your information. So then that maybe they can give you merit-based or need-based scholarships through the institution to help you fund your education. All right, this is also another fun that we get all the time, and it's a dependent or an independent student. So a lot of times students think, well, I may not live with my parent, I'm going to get my own apartment, or my parents don't claim me on my taxes, so I'm an independent student. That's not quite how the FAFSA works. The FAFSA looks at several items to determine if you are required to put parental information and income on the FAFSA. And the first three typically do not apply to high school students, and that's that they're 24 years of age or over, are married, or are a veteran or on active duty in the armed forces. So for most students, you're going to be a dependent student unless you have one of these extenuating circumstances that you will need to show documentation for. It's that you are an orphan or a ward of the court. So you're going to have to provide to the school that you're planning on attending, if you're an orphan or a ward of the court, your birth certificate and death certificates for your parents, if you're an orphan. If you are a ward of the court, you need documentation from DCF showing that you were a ward of the court. If you have a court-appointed legal guardian. And this is the one that really, really confuses students. A lot of times, a family member or a friend will be given custody of the student, but it was not, legal guardianship was not established. And the reason for that is a lot of times it's expensive to go the legal guardian route, and custody is easier to obtain and do. If you do not have a paper that says from the court that a legal guardian was appointed for you, you cannot answer yes to this question. So look at your court document, and if somebody other than your parent has custody of you, but not legal guardianship, you can't answer yes to that question. And we'll talk about a little bit later what you do in that situation, but you cannot answer yes. If you have legal dependents that you support more than 50%, what does that mean? You may be a student that has a child, but if you're living at home with your parents and your parents are providing shelter, food, clothing, and those expenses, you're not supporting that child more than 50%, so you can't answer yes to that question. Are you an emancipated minor? Did the court release you from parental care prior to the age of 18? You need those court documents. Or if you're a student who is homeless or at risk of being homeless, you're going to work with your guidance counselor at the school to provide you with a letter verifying your homeless status. Okay, so those are the questions. If you can answer yes to any of these questions, then it's going to skip the parental information, but know that you're going to have to provide documentation of those statuses other than the first two, because they can see that. But the other ones are going to require you to submit documents to the school. So make sure you have those available for whatever school you're planning on attending, because they're going to ask to see those. Okay. Another one we always get is who is my parent on the FAFSA. So when the parent is talking about FAFSA, it says what is the marital status of your parent. And it's talking about the parent who has custody of you. If your parents are divorced, you're reporting the marital status of the parent that you live with, who provides more than 50% of the support for you, okay? So if your parent are both married and living together, you're going to put both parents on the FAFSA. If your parents are living together but not married, it's treated as married, so you're going to put both parents on the FAFSA. Now, if your parents are divorced or separated and they don't live together, you're going to report that parent that you live with and provides most of your support, okay? If your parents are separated or divorced, but they still live together, it's considered married, so you do need to report both your parents. And there are situations when parents may be going through a divorce or a separation, but they're still residing in the same household. You have to put both parents. So what happens if your parent that you live with is now remarried? Okay, you're reporting the marital status as of the date that you fill out the FAFSA. So if that parent is married, you do need to report your step parent. Okay, so you're looking at situations, and this gets kind of confusing, that we're using 2019 tax information, but here we are in 2020. Okay, so don't report the marital status based on the taxes. Report the marital status as of the date you fill out the FAFSA. So what do I mean by that? Maybe back in 20, your parents were married and they filed taxes married, filing jointly. But in July of this year, they became divorced. You're going to report the marital status of divorced, even though the taxes say married, filing jointly. Another side of that is if your parents, maybe your parent was single at the time they filled out that FAFSA and have now gotten married or remarried, you're going to put the marital status as of the date you filled out the FAFSA. Okay, so that's really important because a lot of times people get that confused. They're looking at, well, the taxes say this, but it's as of the date you fill out the FAFSA. Okay, and you're never ever going to list relatives, aunts, uncles, sisters, brothers, foster parents, legal guardians, unless they have adopted you. So you're only reporting a biological parent or adoptive parent. If you're living with somebody else or you have a legal guardian, you're not reporting them as parents, okay? You're only reporting, your birth parent or your adoptive parent. So let's talk about income information. So back when we talked about those 7 items you need to complete the FAFSA, we need to report some income, okay? So we need to report any wages that you've earned from work, any tips if you're getting those, if you have a business income, if you own rental properties, you need to report that, and that should all be on your taxes, along with interest and ordinary dividends. So if you own stocks and you're getting capital gains, you need to report that. But we also need to look at untaxed income. So this is income that may not appear on your tax return. So if you're receiving child support or you're paying child support, if you're making payments to your tax deferred pensions above what's required of you, if you're getting workers' comp or disability payments, if you're getting veterans benefits, if you're getting housing, food, or living allowance, and you're in the military or a clergy, you're going to report those. You don't report Social Security, except for the amounts that appears on a tax return that is taxable. So if you're a parent who doesn't file taxes and all you have is Social Security disability income, that does not get reported on the FAFSA. That income does not show up. If you're a student and you may be receiving disability benefits because you have a disabled parent, that income does not get reported. So you're not reporting any of that Social Security other than what's taxed on your tax return. So don't double report that. Let's look at some asset information. So this is a question that a lot of times throws people off because they don't know what they need to report. I'm just going to highlight, you do not report the value of the home that you live in. If you own rental property, in addition to that, you're going to report that, but not your primary residence. So it's going to say, what is the value of any assets that you own. Do not include the house you live in. But if you have cash in your checking or savings account, if you own stocks or IRAs, or you have a 529 plan, or you have a Roth IRA, you're going to report those. But what you're not going to report, and a lot of people make this mistake, is if you have a retirement account through work, a 401k, you're not going to report the value of that. Okay, so it'd only be like privately held stocks and bonds and that. And if you own a business, but it's a small business with less than 100 employees, you don't report that as an asset. Okay, so like I mentioned, if you're not sure if you need to report it or not, use that blue circle with the question mark in it, and it'll give you more detailed information on if you need to report it or not. Because a lot of times people report assets that don't need to be reported, and it's lessening the amount of financial aid that your student can receive. What I really want to stress, though, is when you're doing the FAFSA, when it comes to entering tax information, they have made this process so simple and so easy by having this, what's called the IRS data retrieval tool, or the DRT. And what it does, it allows you to have the FAFSA, which is the federal government's Department of Education, talk to the IRS, which is another federal government entity, and it allows the two of them to talk to each other. And it pulls your tax information directly from your tax return that was filed for 2019, and it puts that information into the FAFSA. It reduces the time it's going to take you to complete the FAFSA. You're not going to have to go to line whatever on this tax return, go to this schedule, add this. It's going to do that for you. Okay, it's going to allow it to make the process much easier and more accurate. So you're not going to have those data entry or pulling wrong information from wrong fields. And if your family is selected for a process called verification, it's going to reduce the burden on you to turn in documents to the school. So if you're able to use the data retrieval tool, I highly, highly suggest you to do it, because it's going to make it more accurate, easier, and reduce any burden on you as you go along. Now, the data retrieval, there's some tips for using it. Okay, so when you go to use it, you do want to have your tax return in front of you, because your name and your address must be written out on when you go to put in the form to pull your information. It must match exactly what was on your tax return. So if you abbreviated street as ST, you need to put ST on your address field. If you wrote out street, you need to write out street. Okay, so it has to appear directly as it is. If your name is hyphenated, you need to hyphenate it exactly. If it doesn't match exactly what's there, it will not let you use the data retrieval tool. It's a way to verify that it's you using it. If there are some instances where people cannot use the data retrieval tool, it'll work for about 80 to 85% of individuals. But if you are married filing separately, you can't pull two people in. If you are married, but you filed head of household, which is usually not an allowable tax filing status, married people, generally speaking, are required to file as married filing jointly or married filing separately. Very few instances can a married person file head of household. So if you use that tax filing status, it's not going to let you pull it in. If you're unmarried and living together, again, there's two tax returns that need to be combined. It can't do that. Or if you filed a Puerto Rican or a foreign tax return, it cannot pull those in. But for most of you, you should be able to use it, and I strongly encourage you to do so. It's going to just make the process so much quicker for you. Now let's talk about, a little while ago, I talked about some special circumstances. And that if you're a student who is unable to provide parental information, but you don't meet that independent criteria. So maybe you've lived with your grandmother or you've lived with your aunt, and your parents are just not in the picture, but you don't have the court documents that you need. You're going to complete the FAFSA and check the special circumstances field and submit it without parental information. You're then going to contact the schools that you want to go to, and you're going to explain your situation, and you're going to have to apply for a dependency override. And you're going to have to provide documentations from third parties, whatever court documents you have, a written statement from yourself, a written statement from the person you live in, so that the schools can understand your situation, and schools have the ability to override the requirement for that parental information if you have a unique situation. Now, this one is really important because it really pertains to what we're going on with now. Many families and students are impacted by COVID-19. We're seeing more and more families who have had a severe financial hardship are experiencing a decrease in income. You may have had a death in the family, you may have had a divorce. There are times when the household income and information that's being reported on that FAFSA, which is, again, remember, we're using 2019 income. You're going to school in 2021, so that's 2 years later. A lot of things can change, okay? If you have something that has happened and the FAFSA is not reflecting your current situation, if your income has changed, if your household information has changed, you can reach out to the schools you're planning on attending at any time and ask for a special circumstances appeal. And each school will have a different process, but they're going to collect documentation from you to see what is your current situation, what is currently going on in your family that's different from the FAFSA, okay? So they can look and maybe do a readjustment and not use 2019's income, but look at your current income. So if you're experiencing that, just know that that's an option available to you and that you can go ahead and communicate with each school on what you're looking for, okay? So now let's go on to the next application, which is the CSS profile. Now this is used at a very small percentage of schools. There's roughly 5,300 colleges and universities in the United States. Only 7% use the CSS profile. So it's a very small percentage of universities that'll use this, just about 400 of them. And it's used for a lot of schools to award their private financial aid. And these are a lot of schools that will award up to your cost of attendance. And they'll give you a lot of that school-based aid, okay? But it is a much more intensive application than the FAFSA, okay? You have to report a lot more information. They're going to be looking at 2 tax years. They're going to be looking at 2018 and 2019. It's going to require you to report the value of those small businesses. Remember the FAFSA, if you had a small business that had less than 100 employees, you didn't need to report it. On the CSS profile, you do. On the FAFSA, you don't report the value of your primary residence. On the CSS profile, you do. And on the FAFSA, if your parents were divorced, you're only reporting the income for the parent that you reside with, okay? It's not looking at the other parent. Some of these schools will require you to report both of your parents, whether the parent that you live with and your non-custodial parent. So it is a much more intense application, but like I said, for many students, that's not required. So you want to check with the institution that you're planning on attending to find out if they need this application. Okay, so it is completed on College Board, so that you're going to use the same username and password that you did when you signed up for your SATs. There is a cost. The FAFSA was free. The CSS profile is not. It costs $25 for your first school and $16 for each additional school that you want to apply for. Now, if you're a student who received a fee waiver when you did your SAT, you can get a fee waiver for these as well. So that'll come up during the registration process and you can, have that fee waived. The next application we're going to talk about is Florida Student Aid. And many people know this as the Bright Futures application, but it is so much more than that. It is one application that is used for multiple programs that we're going to go in depth a little bit. It's really important that you fill this out. Unlike the FAFSA, which you do every year, the Florida Aid application is completed once and only in your senior year of high school. And you have to do it by August 31st of the year that you're graduating, okay? And you can only apply in your senior year. So if you miss this opportunity, or maybe you're a student thinking, I'm going out of state, I don't care, I'm not doing this, your plans may change, things may change, and then if you decide to come back to Florida, you can't do it then. So do it in your senior year of high school, get it done. Unlike the FAFSA, which allows you to list up to 10 schools that you want to attend, you can really only put one school on this application. So if you end up not going to that school and going to another school, just make sure that you go back and update it to the correct school that you've chosen to go to. Okay, so let's talk about some of the aid that is available through the state of Florida. So the state of Florida has need-based money. So it is for students who have financial need. And they use this with the FAFSA data. So you need to have a FAFSA because the Florida aid application will not ask you for any financial data. It's going to pull from your FAFSA because you're going to put your state of residence on that FAFSA, and it's going to pull over to the state. Okay, but there's the Florida Student Assistance Grant. So that it provides low-income families with additional help. There's also the First Generation Matching Grant. So this is for students like myself who are a first-generation college student and are Pell eligible. So what is first generation? It means that you are the first in your family to go to college. The first generation. It means that neither of your parents have a bachelor's degree. They could have attended some college. They could have gotten an associate's degree, maybe went to a trade school. But if they don't, neither of your parents have a bachelor's degree, you are first generation. It doesn't matter if you've had a sibling, a brother or a sister who may have already gone to college and maybe even graduated. If your parents do not have a bachelor's degree, you are a first generation college student, and they have state matching dollars with the individual school. So you're going to want to find out how each school awards their first generation matching grant if that applies to you. At FGCU, we roll that into our foundation scholarship application. Other schools will have separate application processes. So you want to, they also have FWEP, which is a work-based employment program for students so that they can earn money to help pay for their expenses. So those are some of the programs that are need-based through the state. And then they also have merit-based. So these are the ones you might be a little bit familiar with, which is Bright Futures. So that is going to be solely based on your academic performance. So that is based on your ACT or SAT score and your high school GPA. You will notice that for this year, the Bright Futures top level score has gone up. Okay, so in order to qualify for that, you now need a 1350 for the highest, 1290 for the lowest, the medallion level, and then there's other ones for vocational. If you're going to a vocational school or going for your AS degree, they have the gold seal. So you want to familiarize yourself with those, do your community service hours, make sure you get those completed. Start testing. Testing is reopened in Florida. There was just a test 2 weeks ago. Hopefully some of you who could not take it last year have taken it. If not, get registered for that. You also have the Benequisto Scholarship. So if you're a student who is identified as a National Merit Scholar, they have that scholarship as well. We also have programs called ABLE and EASE. So if you are a student from the state of Florida and you're going to a private school, these are funding that you can receive from the state to help pay for that. If you're a student who is of Hispanic origin and you're going on to become a teacher, there's scholarships for you. Minority teacher scholarships. If you are a child of a veteran who died or is 100% disabled as a result of service, they have a scholarship for you. Okay, so there are a lot of other aid from the state other than Bright Futures. So you want to make sure that you get that application so that you can be considered for all of those programs. And the last one is institutional aid. So you need to find out and do some research on every institution that you're looking to apply for. So you need to know, where are you planning on attending? Okay, what are the schools that you're looking to go to? And you need to do some research, either call them, look on their website, and find out, how do I apply? Is there a supplemental application, or is it just determined at the time of admissions? Okay, when is the deadline to apply? Okay, remember, financial aid timelines are not one size fits all. Every school is going to have their own process, and you need to know what those are. Keep track. Smart kids miss deadlines and they miss out on opportunities. So you want to make sure that you're tracking that and you know what you need to do, when you need to give it. So let's just talk about FGCU, because that's something I know about. So if you're interested in applying to FGCU, If you apply for admissions by November 1st, you're automatically considered for our admissions merit scholarships. But we also have a whole different pool of scholarships that have a separate application, and that is our foundation scholarships. And you don't need to wait till you're admitted to apply. You just need to have your university ID number, which you get after you apply to FGCU. So you would fill out our supplemental application, and that allows you to be considered for not only merit scholarships, but now our foundation scholarships. And again, those applications are going to open for the foundation scholarships on October 1st with our priority deadline of January 1st. So for those of you who are looking to go to FGCU, I've just done your homework for you, okay? So now let's just talk about scholarships in general, because these are so vital to helping you pay for college, keep your loan debt to hopefully nothing or to a minimum. You know, you hear about a lot of students who are incurring debt to go to school. If you follow all of these things and you're applying for the programs, you can help mitigate that need for loans, okay? So let's talk about the types of scholarships there are. So there are career-based. Those are, what is your major going to be? What are you going to be studying? So those are scholarships that are targeted for a particular major or field of study. We also have academic, or what we call merit scholarships. Those are going to be based on your GPA, your test scores, your class rank, okay? Then we have financial need, because that's going to look at your family's income. How much money do they have to help you pay for college, okay? Do they need some help there? And then we have activities related, okay? So that's for our athletes. Maybe you're in a dance group, maybe you're in 4-H, or you're volunteering. Those are scholarships that are based on what you've done and what activities you've participated in, what clubs you've been in. So those are the types of like activities related scholarships. So why bother applying for scholarships? Because the time you put into it equals money. Let's just say you spend 10 hours applying for scholarships, which is really not a large amount of time, and you earn $1,000 in scholarships. You just made $100 an hour. Where else are you going to make that type of money just for completing an application? So it is a worthwhile investment for you to spend the time and do that. I know your senior years are busy, you're doing a lot of things, but you want to make sure that you allocate time for this because it's going to pay off for you in the future. Okay, so how do you find these scholarship opportunities? Where are they? I would say first and foremost, check with your guidance office. They have a lot of great information and resources, and they can help you. They know local scholarships, they have information, maybe there's school-based scholarships that you can apply for. And then you're going to look at community foundations. You are so fortunate here in Collier County to have two wonderful foundations that award scholarships, which is the Community Foundation of Collier County and the Southwest Florida Community Foundation. These are scholarships where you're competing on a local level, so the pool of applicants is much smaller than if you're going national, okay? So you want to start there. If you do nothing else, make sure you do those two. Also look at your employer, not just yours, but your parents. Maybe you're a student who's working at Publix, they have scholarships for students. Chipotle has scholarships, Starbucks. There's a lot of employers that give scholarships to their workforce. Your parents' employer may have a scholarship. Are you involved in a religious or community organization? Local businesses, civic groups, they give out scholarships. So you want to make sure that, the Naples Daily News gives out scholarships. Make sure you're applying for those opportunities. Look for those. You want to look at organizations related to your field of study. So if you want to be a chemist, you're going to look for the Chemistry Society, those scholarships. You're going to also use scholarship search engines. So there's some national ones like FastWeb, College Board, Career One Stop, which is put out by the Department of Labor. We also have a lot more on our website. So we have a lot more great sources that you can go to. And even if you're not planning on attending FGCU, you can kind of use this as a springboard for you, which is just go to fgcu.edu/scholarships. And we have a lot of information on scholarship opportunities, for military scholarships, for outside scholarships, community scholarships. So you can use that kind of as your launching pad as you're starting the process. So Create a scholarship game plan. This is so important. Plan to apply for as many scholarships as possible. Will you get all of them? No. Will you get rejected from a majority of them? Yes. But if you only got a small percentage of what you applied for, you're going to be well ahead of the game. Prepare to invest time in this project. You have to make the time to do it. It's really something that everyone can do. There are scholarships for everyone. They're not just for the athletes. They're not just for the A students. There are scholarships for everyone. Develop a portfolio of reusable materials. So what do I mean by that? You can reuse essays. You can reuse letters of recommendation. You can take your personal statement, have that ready. So when you go to apply for that, you're reusing that stuff, okay? Take stock of yourself. What makes you you? So think about your religion, your hobbies, your interests, your ethnic background, where do you live, your family affiliations, your physical attributes, your educational goals, and use these to conduct your search. Look for family connections, community service achievements, disabilities, any special talents that you have. Okay, so you want to do an inventory of you. What are things that you've participated in that are unique to you? Anything that you can now use, and then learn how to Google. Okay, so you're not just going to search scholarship. You're going to try things like health profession scholarships, or scholarships for military children, or scholarships for left-handed people, scholarships for Harry Potter fans. You're going to, look at those unique things that may be unique to you and search for those. Okay, remember, never apply for a scholarship. They should never cost you anything. Also, they should not be asking for personal identification information like your social security number, okay? Those are things you want to avoid. Those should not be asking for those when you're looking for them. But get ready. Start this now so that you can get as many applications as possible done. All right, so now you've done all of your applications. What happens next? How does that award letter get generated? How do schools take that information and determine what you're eligible to receive? So we're going to call this the financial aid award process. So you filled out your FAFSA. Once your FAFSA is processed in approximately 3 days, it takes about that long, it's going to go to a processing unit. They're going to process that FAFSA, and they're going to let you know that your FAFSA was processed, and they're going to send you what's called your student aid report. And a lot of students will just ignore this email and not even look at it. It's really vital that you open that email, click on the link, and look at your student aid report. Review it, make sure that you didn't make any errors, and then look at the important comments, because the FAFSA will let you know if they have additional questions or are going to need additional documentation to complete your application. Okay, so by those comments if the schools are going to be asking for citizenship documents. If you're male and you didn't register for selective service, they're going to need proof of registration for selective service. They may be selected for verification, so you may need to provide those tax information to the school. Those comments are going to tell you that. They're also going to give you, if your FAFSA doesn't need any other information, it's going to give you your expected family contribution. It's going to tell you what aid in terms of Pell and loans that you qualify for. So it's going to give you that information. So you'll have that within a couple of days of your FAFSA. Those results are also sent to each school that you listed on the application. So if you send it to FGCU, we get that and we look at it and we say, okay, the Department of Education wants us to collect some additional documents and we're going to assign them to you to turn in. Okay, so just remember, if you have those documents to turn in, your financial aid is not finalized until those documents are submitted and reviewed and your FAFSA is cleared, okay? Once you do that, each school is then going to create your individualized financial aid package. And that aid can vary from school to school. So it's what Pell and loans will be the same regardless of what school you go to. Those are going to go with you everywhere. But the other aid is going to be based on how much money the institution has to award you, and then some of the other programs, there are limited pools of money. So did you meet their priority deadline? Do you meet the qualifications to receive some of those other funding? Okay. So they look at that And then they also look at the cost of attendance. So when you're looking to apply to a school, each school is going to calculate what it's going to cost you to attend there for 1 year. And it's going to look at several items. Those items are directly billed to the school. So those are going to be the charges that are going to appear on your student account. So those are tuition and fees. So you're registered, you're taking classes. If you're going to be a student who's living on campus, it's going to look at your room charge and like a meal plan charge, okay? But then there's also expenses that you're going to incur, but they're not going to be directly billed to you. But they're going to be factored in because they know that there's more expenses to being a college student than just those direct costs. So they're going to factor in a cost for books. They're going to factor in a cost for transportation, whether you're a commuter student and you're driving to the campus every day, or you're a student who's going to be living on campus but now needs to come home at the breaks, need to get to campus at the start of the semester and at the end of the semester, so you're going to get a transportation allowance. And then there's some personal expenses. So we all have, expenses that come with being a student. So those are what's going to encompass your cost of attendance. So then they look at what type of aid do you qualify for. So free money, which is my favorite type of money, is money that doesn't need to be paid back. So this is money that's given to you as a gift, okay? And those are going to be scholarships, grants, or fellowships. And then we're also going to look at borrowed money. So that's money that you need to pay back. So that's like a loan. So it could be a student loan, a parent loan, or a private loan, okay? And then there's earned money. So that's like where you get the opportunity to get like a job for the work study. And if you work, you get paid, and you can use that money to help fund your expenses. So those are the types of aid. Now they're going to be taking that and awarding you. So what they do is to determine what you're eligible to receive. They're going to take your cost of attendance and they're going to factor that in there. You're going to then subtract from that any financial aid of grants and scholarships. Okay, so we're only going to look at free money, and that's your net price. That is what you're going to have to pay out of pocket, or you can cover with savings, working, or loans. So when you're comparing schools, you're always going to want to be looking at the net price. What is it going to cost me to attend here versus any free money, gifts, grants, and scholarships that they're giving me? What's left over? What do I have to cover either out of money that I've saved or loans? Okay, so when you're going to looking at and comparing, you're going to only be looking at net price. So what is the actual cost to attend? Are the costs accurate? Do your research. Okay, so if they're looking at, remember I talked about the cost to attend. If you're living on campus, look at where you would want to live if you were living on campus. Are those costs for housing accurate? Or are you going to be someone who maybe wants to live in a single or a newer residence hall, so your costs may be higher? Are the book costs reasonable? Are the transportation, is it reasonable? So look at that and see, are these really accurate costs? So do your research on that. Know what money, understand what aid is free and what needs to be paid back. And know what requirements are to maintain that aid that's offered. So if you're given a scholarship, what GPA do you need to maintain to keep it? How many credit hours do you need to do each year? And is this award one time, or is it renewable? Can I get this next year? Or am I only getting this for my freshman year? And now how am I going to afford my next 3 years of school? So these are the questions you need to be asking when you're looking at those award letters. So in summary, we're just going to go over something. Just apply early. Know your deadlines, do your research, monitor, check your emails and your student portals for the schools that you're going to be applying to frequently. Be in contact with the schools. If you've heard from maybe you've applied to 6 schools and you've heard from 5 of them, but you haven't heard from the 6th, reach out to that school, find out. There may be maybe you entered something incorrectly on your application. So if you're not hearing from all of the schools, call them, find out what's going on. Submit any documents that you need, and then ask if you need help. Contact that financial aid office for assistance. Reach out to them if you have a special circumstances. There are resources and avenues available to you if you fall into that. Well, I hope Hope you've learned a lot today. I hope I've answered a lot of your questions. But if I haven't gotten to that yet, go ahead and take that moment there in the chat. I've been given a paper plate of questions. We are very high tech over here. Thank you so much. All right, question number 1. I saw Bright Futures offers of scholarships which you don't need ACT or SAT. It's the least competitive, called the Florida Gold Seal Vocational Scholarship. Can you tell me about this? Yeah, so when you complete the Bright Futures application, there is the Gold Seal. And then again, that can only be used at technical schools or schools offering an associate's degree, okay, an AS degree. So you're going to complete that. There's certain requirements for that that you need to meet to be considered for that. So you can go ahead and, when you do that application, all of that information is there. It says, I could fill out the FAFSA last month, but you said it will be available in October. Did I make a mistake? That is a great reminder, and it's something I forgot to tell you. The FAFSA is currently out there right now, but it's the 2020-21 FAFSA. So it is the FAFSA for students who are currently in school. But if you're a student who is planning on starting in the summer, you can go ahead and do that 2021 FAFSA, but the FAFSA, which is for students who are going to be starting in fall of 21, opened on October 1st. So yes, there is one out there now. So if you did it and you're not planning on starting in the summer, it was a great practice for you. So now you know what to expect when you go and do the real one on October 1st. Does FAFSA offer other aid besides loans? Absolutely. So that's the Pell Grant. Those are the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. So there are some grant programs through the federal government as well. So that's, Pell is the largest grant-based program. Does each parent have to have an FSA ID? No. Only one parent needs to sign the application. The other parent may need an FSA ID down the road if they want to apply for a Parent Plus loan in their name, but only one parent needs it for purposes of completing the FAFSA. Okay, so when completing FAFSA, what if your parents have a small business with less than 100 employees, but that is their only source of income? So you're not going to report that as an asset, but their income for that business is reported because they're filing a tax return. So that will be captured on the tax return. So you're just not counting that as an asset, okay? Can I use my parents' ITIN number instead of SSN? Yes, you can. So if your parents have that, you can plug that in as well. Is the Bright Futures application due August 31st, 2021 for the 2021? So this would be for the 21-22 school year. So if you're a senior now, you're graduating in May, you have to complete that application by August 31st, but please don't wait that long. Do it now, okay? You want to make sure that you're completing that currently, okay? So you have plenty of time to still complete that. And there's another question that I wasn't aware about the Bright Futures deadline date. Is it possible to still apply for it? Remember, if you're a senior now, you have until August 31st of next year. Okay, so it doesn't even open for you yet till October 1st. So you have time to do that. We're also, one of the questions was, there anything for law enforcement? There are some law enforcement scholarships through individual institutions. And when you do our scholarship search engines, there are scholarships particularly for those. Is FAFSA only available for those who want to study in Florida? No, FAFSA is a national federal. So keep federal is the whole United States. State would be the state of Florida. So FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. So that is for someone who can go to any school across the country. So regardless of you're going to stay in state or you're going to go out of state, you're going to do that FAFSA. I have no idea what this one means, so I'm sorry. For those of you who just asked the question, what can I do if I'm in a paper and I don't know what the next one is? So if you want to clarify that a little bit, I'll be happy to answer that. Did anybody else have any other questions regarding financial aid that maybe I didn't cover or that you needed help with? Okay, so I'll give that person a minute or two to clarify what they were. If I do a sport this year, is it possible to get a scholarship or is it too late for that? So if you're a student who's looking for an athletic-based scholarship, you're going to be communicating with each individual school to find out what their athletic scholarship process is. Each school is going to award through their athletics department scholarships based on their recruitment process. So you would work with that. Can we start the process as a junior? You can't do the FAFSA to your senior year, but you can absolutely start the scholarship process. Some of the scholarships are open to juniors, and it's also a time to do your research. So you can see what scholarships are out there that you would qualify for. Most of them are offered year after year. So then you'll know what documents and things that you need to get ready, but you can absolutely, you can go to the Community Foundation of Collier County, the Southwest Florida Community Foundation, and start your accounts now. You can actually start that your freshman year. So, but a lot of scholarships, some of them are open to juniors, the majority of them are going to be open to seniors. I paid for a program called C3, right? That helps with the financial aid. Is it a good idea to receive both help from these two programs? C3, if you're paying someone to help you apply for financial aid, I don't think that's necessary. There's so many helpful free resources out there. I would, really not do that. This is another question. It says, if we have questions after this, is there a way to contact me? Absolutely. You can reach out to me. We'll go ahead and I'll share my contact information in the chat. So you are welcome to contact me if maybe there's something that you didn't feel comfortable discussing tonight in a group setting or asking in a group. I'm more than happy to help you. You have a friend here at FGCU Financial Aid. I have contacts in admissions, so if you have questions about anything, either FGCU specific or just the financial aid process, I'll be happy to help you with that. So that's the last question that just came in. So if you are seniors, we don't apply to FAFSA when we are ready to go to college. No, you're doing it this October. So October 1st, 2020, you are doing that FAFSA application. So in just a few weeks, you are going to FAFSA.gov to complete your FAFSA. You're going to Florida Student Financial Aid to complete your state application, and then you're going to be reaching out to the individual institutions to find out what their application process is. Do you need an SAT or an ACT score to apply for scholarships? Some scholarships, the merit ones, remember we talked about those different types of scholarships, they may require your ACT or SAT scores. Not all of them do, because they're not just based on merit. There's other ones for activities, there's need-based, and then there's career path-based. So not all of them are going to require that. What can I do if I have a case of immigration and I don't get my papers? So if you don't have those legal documents yet, then you can't apply for scholarships. You can't apply for FAFSA, but you want to be looking for scholarships. So if you go to our website, fgcu.edu/scholarships, we have stuff on there for DACA or undocumented students. So we have a lot of resources out there for that. What about if a student works part-time at McDonald's? Do you need their income? Well, it depends. Remember, we're using the 2019 tax information. So if you did not work or file taxes in 2019, you don't need that information. So you're not looking at today, you're looking at the year of 2019. So if you worked and filed taxes in 2019, yes, we need that, okay? All right, here's another one. Is there a maximum amount of scholarships that you can be given? Fantastic question. Yes, up to your cost of attendance. So you can keep applying to get your entire thing paid for. The next is Bright Futures only with a high score or GPA? Do they look at both or just test results? You have to have three things. You need to have the GPA, you have to have the SAT, ACT scores, and you need to have your community service hours, plus proof of graduation when you've actually graduated. So Bright Futures will look at all of those items, okay? Well, I think that's about all we have time for tonight. Again, if you need to contact me, I'm going to go ahead and give you my information. You're going to, you can email me. It's mgonzalez, so mgonzalez @fgcu.edu. So you're welcome to contact me. We will then go ahead and post this in the chat so that you're welcome to contact me. We will also we've recorded this presentation and we will make it available to you so that you can go back and rewatch it, or if there's something that you missed or you want to, re-see something, you can have that. So we will make that available to your guidance counselor by tomorrow, so that she'll have that available and she can post and share that with you. All right. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you all have learned a lot. I really appreciate you inviting me out tonight. Again, feel free to reach out to me with any questions or feedback that you have, whether it's positive or negative. If I can improve or change something to make it clearer, I want to know that too. So feel free to just shoot me an email with any feedback that you might have. And again, just thank you for your time tonight and have a great evening.